Welcome to Buckets, Action Network's WNBA betting podcast presented by BetMGM. And happy 4th of July. We are recording this episode Thursday evening. So pardon us because the Aces are playing on a back-to-back and they're not playing until 10 o'clock Eastern. So we're going to be without a little bit of info, but I think we're going to be able to still get you a nice preview. They're playing again Friday against the Sparks, but hope you're enjoying your holiday. This is our best bets episode for the 5th. We have a 3-game slate on Ion. I'm Maria Marino and grateful that on this holiday, Jim Turvey is back on the podcast.
Yeah, I had to, take a break between some hot dogs, some beers, hop on, give out some picks, and then get back to the fireworks and all the 4th of July goodness that hopefully we're all celebrating.
Absolutely. Do you want to tease us here with a best bet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do think it's a little bit of a late slate. We don't have player props out just yet. My favorite bet for the day is one of these funky quarter ones. I'm going to go with Aces in the second quarter against the Sparks. We'll talk through that. And I lean towards the Seattle Storm on the spread. And then for the weekend, I do like another quarter play. I like the Liberty in the first quarter against the Indiana Fever.
Well, look at you. Okay, so with the 3-game slate, normally the way I do these episodes, as you know, Jim, is like I'll start with like the earliest game and work our way through. But we are boycotting that for this time because the earliest game on Friday is the Dream at the Wings, and we're just like not super enthused about that one. We're still going to touch on it a little bit later, but we're going to start. Where do you want to start? You want to start Sky Storm or Aces Sparks?
Let's go Sky Storm since we actually have the line for that one.
Perfect. Okay. So speaking of, we are seeing the Storm laying 9.5 at home against the Chicago Sky, 10 o'clock Eastern on Friday. Storm are in a nice little schedule spot. They are 13-6 straight up and against the spread. They have won and covered 4 straight, although the last 2 were against Dallas. But their last game was Monday, so they're going to be pretty rested. And get this, this is game 5 of a 9-game homestand for Seattle. What is going on with the WNBA schedule this season? I mean, I guess the Olympics just threw everything off, but make sure you're checking the schedules for all of these teams and really looking ahead and looking back, because there are just some weird stretches like this, like long road trips, long homestands, some way tougher schedules for some teams and easier schedules for others. But I'll just set up the Sky side of this real quick. They are 7-11 straight up and against the spread. They last played on Tuesday, a nice little win against Atlanta on the road. You may have heard the rookie of the month for June, Angel Reese, who is also now an all-star, had 12 points and a franchise record 19 rebounds in this game on Tuesday. That was her 11th straight double-double. She is 1 away from Candace Parker's record of 12 straight. Jim, can she keep it going?
There's no reason she can't, because ironically, the tougher thing for her often is the points. The rebound, the stuff she is doing on the glass is absolutely unbelievable. Now, I will say she will face probably the best defensive backcourt, if not, or front court, sorry, the best defensive front court in the league in Ezi Magbagor and Nneka Ogwumike. And Ezi Magbagor might have a little reason to be, Angel Reese. I threw her out as the potential all-star on that Green Dot Daily a little while back, but that was kind of my hot take. And I certainly would not have put her over Ezi Magbagor, who I think has been playing at a very clear all-star level. So Ezi might have a little bit of added motivation to make sure that the Angel doesn't get there, but it will be a tough matchup scoring wise. If you're looking at an Angel play, I would go the rebounds over the points for sure, just because she is going to be drawing, 2 of the best defenders in the league. And it's part of why I think that this Seattle team is actually in pretty good shape to handle the Sky at their home court, which has been such a strong home court for them all year.
Right. And, when it comes to the points for Angel, what's helped her is she's been able to get to the line, and she's not shooting poorly from the line either. So, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets to 10. I'm not sure, where the number is going to be for her on the prop market. But I agree with you about Ezi Magbagor. Kevin Pelton of ESPN wrote that you could argue this is like the biggest snub ever for an all-star team. So there's that to consider. Meanwhile, the Fever have what, 3 all-stars, which was like, okay. But interestingly, Kelsey Mitchell was voted by, I want to say, was named by the league or the media. I'll figure that one out. Regardless, I'm getting off track. We lean the Storm here. I am in agreement with you because they have just, if you look at their record, they have taken care of the teams they're supposed to take care of. Like, they really have just been very solid. Jewel Lloyd had her get right game against the Fever. So I'm feeling good about what she's doing. But Kennedy Carter, though, I mean, she's another one I didn't mention her from the other night. How many did she have the other night? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact number, but she honestly has a pretty good all-star case. If she had been starting all season, the books still haven't adjusted her line. I would imagine after the most recent game of theirs, the win in Washington, that they will, or the win against Atlanta, sorry, that they will adjust her points prop, but it keeps coming out at like 15.5, 16.5, right, which as a starter, she's just clearing it every game. It's so impressive. She doesn't do it from 3. She just gets downhill, gets to the basket. She is so fun to watch. Definitely has all-star appearances in her future. She's still super young too.
Yeah, so fun to watch. And just to clarify, she had 26 the other night against Atlanta. So I wanted to give her flowers as well. Very curious if they still hang that line around where you
I think it's going to be a bigger line. I'll say in terms of leaning towards the Storm as a whole, so they're 8-1 at home, and they actually have won 8 straight at home. It was that first game of the first home game of the season. They lost to the Lynx. They've won every home game since then. Their home net rating is plus 17.7. That's easily the best in the WNBA right now. And, got this little nugget the other night on the broadcast. Basically, you said their overall record straight up is 13-6, and their ATS record is 13-6. That's because their games are blowouts either direction. They don't play close games really. So that's a little bit, that makes the 9.5 a little bit less scary. You can almost treat it like the Matt Mitchell rule, where it's like, if they're winning this, they're going to cover that game, especially at home where they have been so strong. Now, Chicago is a very good road team. They're actually, pound for pound, one of the better road teams in the W, which is why it's more of a lean for me. You have the 9.5 plus a really good road team, plus just Teresa Weatherspoon teams don't often, they're mostly the opposite of Seattle. They're playing a lot of tight games. So that's why it's more of a lean than a full hammer best bet or anything. But I definitely am on the Seattle side of things here on Friday evening.
Definitely. And, I too, when I see 9.5, it does scare me a little bit. But like I said, they have time to prepare. They're a good team. Yeah. They're taking care of bad teams. They've had a few days off. They're at home. Like, I just don't see why they would stumble here. And especially with that Ezi, potential revenge.
Yeah, if you want a fun little narrative same game parlay, it'd be fun to go, Ezi over her points and her rebounds, Angel under her points especially. That's the one that's going to be the most controllable. So that might be one that a little narrative revenge spot for Ezi for the All-Star game.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's talk about the other more fun game on on Friday. And this game does have blowout potential. It's the Aces in Los Angeles against the Sparks, again, 10 o'clock Eastern. So, as mentioned, the Aces are playing Washington tonight. I wasn't going to stay up until, after midnight Eastern to record a pod for y'all. Sorry. But what I can tell you is that the Aces are favored by 15.5 going into this game against Washington. Washington just beat the Sparks the other day. And it's making me think, Jim, that the line is probably going to be pretty similar for the Aces. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think Washington's a slightly better team than the Sparks at this point in time. So it honestly, it might even be a few more points higher for Sparks. But then you have the fact that it's a back-to-back for the Aces. So it might kind of even out. I'm with you. I think it'll be in the 15.5, 16.5 range.
The Aces against the Sparks, it's been a kind of a juicy matchup this season. And a big reason why I think is Dearica Hamby. And it's no secret she has some extra motivation, I think, against her former team. So the first time that these two teams played on May 18th, it was a close game and the Sparks covered pretty easily. And then the second time, they won outright June 9th. Obviously, the Aces are a different team now. They have Chelsea Gray back, and going into this matchup Thursday, they have won all 5 games since Gray returned. She came back June 19th, and I would assume, Jim, that it's going to be 6 straight when we get into Friday. What else do you make of this spot?
Yeah, well, I think this is going to be a really, I do think it could be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a very fast-paced game. The Aces have looked just outstanding with Chelsea back. We talked about, they were 6-6. Was it the buy low spot? It looks like it might have been the only time that we were going to get to buy low on the Aces, because they have hit the ground running with Chelsea back. Look really, really strong. And there really hasn't been against the top competition, but the Sparks are not the top competition. So I think that they've kind of been running teams out of the gym. My look for this game, I talked about it in the best bets, is the second quarter. Now, again, these quarter bets are a little tricky. You want to make sure that you're far enough in the season that it's not noisy. But part of this is last year, the Aces first half was the wagon that we rode all season. So this is kind of, along the same lines. They do get out these quick starts. It's really been the second quarter. They've been outstanding this year. They have 16.9 net rating in the second quarter, but the flip side of this is the Sparks have been just truly, truly terrible in the second quarter, with a minus 24.2 net rating in these second quarters this year. I think that has to do with the fact that this is a Sparks team that Kurt Miller is almost, he's trying stuff every game, and credit to him. He's not sitting there and just playing the boring old veterans 35 minutes a game, trying to win a few games here and there. He's trying everything, but the second quarter is kind of the quarter where that has hit the fan the most potentially. And they have been really bad in these second quarters all season. So I'm going to target that second quarter for the Aces. It'll probably be pretty heavy, but the nice thing about these second quarter bets, they overweight the first quarter, because oftentimes, and when I talk about the Liberty down the line, I'll talk about they are a top tier team that gets out to these really good first quarters. But the Aces this year, it's been the second quarters. So you can get an extra point or two on the spread there typically. Probably be something like 4.5, 5.5 for that second quarter. But I'm going to lay that just based on what we've seen this season from these two teams. The Sparks also allow a lot of assists. I'm actually really curious to see. So Jackie Young assists under is a look I've been betting lately with Chelsea Gray back. But I know that our friend Stephen Keach gave that out today through the Action app, and it got hammered down. If it drops down to 4.5, I might actually come back around to be on the over for this Friday matchup. I think Jackie's one of the best at handling these back-to-backs. Aces give up a lot of assists. And there's the potential for Chelsea Gray sitting this game, or at least having a lighter minute load on a back-to-back, considering she's still working her way back. So you might be able to buy low on Jackie assists, which have been bet down, because that has been the sharp side to be on with Chelsea back. But now with the potential for Chelsea maybe being out or just having limited minutes in a great matchup, high pace, Sparks team that gives up a lot of assists, you might be able to get to it either way on that one.
I'm really glad you brought up that point about Gray, potentially, since this is the second night of a back-to-back, will she rest a little bit more? Because my whole thing was, even though I've said, okay, the Sparks have been competitive with the Aces, both meetings this season. I talked about Dearica Hamby. She had 29 and 9 in the first matchup, had 18 and 10 boards and 5 assists in the second matchup, which the Sparks won. I was still hesitant. I'm hesitant to bet the Sparks to cover, because I'm like, oh, well, the Aces are kind of a different team with Chelsea Gray back. But to your point, I am curious if they take it a little bit easier with her. And it honestly shouldn't matter. They're gonna win this game, but at the same time, that is a big number, and that is I'm kind of wondering, Sparks, they can win by 15, or I'm sorry, they can lose by 15. So I don't know. That is something that I'm going to be wondering about, and definitely take a look at just what happened in the game Thursday night against Washington, and see if you get any feelings after that, one way or the other. That's kind of how I'm going to be approaching it. And as always, if I bet anything, if Jim bets anything, we'll log it in the Action app. So make sure you follow us, and then you can see exactly what's going on during the day on Friday. So we did have the one other game on Friday. Let's just go through that a little bit. It's the Dream at Dallas, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Dream are another one, same record straight up and against the spread, 7-11. So they upset Connecticut a week ago. Then they covered against New York, but the last time out lost to Chicago. The Wings, since getting that upset last week against Minnesota, which you called,
I thought they dragged me back in with that win though, and then they've smacked me around since.
I know you got a little too high after that win. I don't think you called it on our podcast, but on your podcast, Bet She Wins, which you all should check out. You did,
which you were on, yeah.
And I was actually on that episode, and I was like, Minnesota, they're not going to have a letdown. Like, come on, Cheryl Reeves, too good, blah, blah, blah. Well, forget that. I guess a brutal schedule spot that was like a noon game, after the Commissioner's Cup hangover. Anyway, so since that time, they have dropped 3 straight. The Wings, they last played on Wednesday, lost to Phoenix, allowed Phoenix to score 104 points. So do you have any thoughts whatsoever on this?
I don't have a lot. These are 2 teams that are kind of infuriating to bet. They're filled with players who are infuriating to bet. Although I will say, so Dearica McCowan, if you followed in the app, was all over her yesterday. And she ended up getting benched for basically the entire second half. And I thought it was a little unfair because I'll say this. Watching the foul calls that got her in the foul trouble that I'm assuming then led to her being benched because LT was frustrated with her picking up so many fouls. I did not see a foul on either one of those. And watching these Wings games, I often think Dearica McCowan gets a really, really bad whistle, both on actual foul calls and then on technicals. She gets a ton of technicals. Unless she's saying some really magic words, she is not very demonstrative, and she gets teed up constantly. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know, where it comes from, but she seems to really get a bad whistle. And it's, when you're on the one side of betting Dearica McCowan, it's you definitely notice it. But I think even outside of that, I'm curious what's going on there. It seems like she gets a real rough whistle.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of Wings games. I've purposely been avoiding it. But I do think sometimes bigger, more physical players in the W don't get the right whistle. Like, it just seems like, the smaller players will absorb incremental contact, and it seems worse than it is. And so that can be a little bit annoying, but yeah.
The only thing I'll add there is I think it's going to be a low pace game. These are 2 pretty, the Wings, you wouldn't think of it, but they're actually a pretty slow paced team. So if anything, I would lean towards some player unders potentially. But I kind of went through where lines had been. Nothing really popped. And again, they're 2 teams and 2 sets of players that just kind of are all over the place. So I'll probably maybe have one bet for this, but probably not much.
Right. The Wings are 4-16, so worst record in the W, 7-13 against the spread. And the only other thing I'll say is if I had a rooting interest, it would be on the side of Dallas, merely because of our preseason bet for Atlanta to miss the playoffs. So apologies to the Dream, or as Sean Kerner occasionally refers to them as the Nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, now I feel mean. All right, before we go, those are the 3 games for Friday, but you did want to look ahead to that Liberty Fever game, which is 1:00 Eastern on Saturday. So what was the thought process there?
Definitely. Well, to me, that's going to be the marquee game of the weekend. That should be a really good game. I think you said it was 1:00 on Saturday. So I really like the Liberty to start this game fast. And there's a couple of different ways to bet it here. You could just bet the first quarter. Liberty, again, plus 23.2 net rating in the first quarter. They've been bonkers in first quarters. The Fever have been the worst team. Again, this is multi-season for both teams. So the Liberty were strong first quarter last year. Fever were the worst team in the W last year for first quarters. They just really can't get off to quick starts. It's part of what has been holding them back this whole time. But there's also an option you can bet wire to wire. And I've had a couple people reach out to clarify this. So I figured it was a good time to bring it up here. This wire to wire bet, you might think it means they have to lead the entire game. It actually just means they have to lead at the end of each quarter. So if I like the Liberty to win this first quarter, and I lean towards Liberty for the full game. I do think this wire to wire bet, I don't have a price for it yet, but I think it was around like in the 180 range last time that a game was something like this. That's a really nice way to get a Liberty, kind of like the first quarter slash, the double result first quarter and full game. But usually you can get it even at even a little bit less juice because you have to do at the end of the second quarter, at the end of the third quarter as well.
Double result is end of the first half and full game.
And
correct?
Sometimes they offer end of the first quarter and full game as well.
Okay, gotcha. Because I heard you say first quarter, and I wanted to clarify that. But that's really good to know. And shout out to the Liberty, because we did our Buckets Wnba field trip the other day in Brooklyn. It was a smashing success. Liberty getting revenge on the Lynx, although a couple of the people in attendance in the group were a little upset that the Lynx just completely fell apart and just could not put the ball in the ocean for the last 7-8 minutes of that game.
Yeah, so, I think Dano had Lynx spread, right?
Yeah, Dano had Lynx spread. I mean, Sean Kerner was on with us on our last episode, had also the Lynx. Because the spread was, I think you could probably get it 5.5 to 6.5. Lynx were dogs. But yeah, they there's no reason why they shouldn't have covered that game. They just all of a sudden
was it 2 points in the last 8 minutes or something insane like that?
Yeah, it was. They just forgot how to score. But
yeah.
I purposely did not bet aside because I wanted to just root unencumbered for the home team. So that's what we did. But
we had the really fun sweat because Lainey was my best bet, was Lainey rebounds, and she had 4 rebounds within 5 minutes. I was like, oh, this is gonna be the easiest win ever. Then they took one of her rebounds away, and suddenly it was she was stuck on 4 for the rest of the game. And it took a rebound, I think with 2 minutes to go, finally cleared. It went from such an easy win to such a good sweat. But we got it across the finish line at the last second there.
Yeah,
so that was fun.
I stupidly decided to go assist with her, which I regret now, but that's okay. All right. Quick programming note before we say goodbye. So we normally do, our best bets episodes come out Tuesday, they're up and out first thing in the morning and Friday. It's a little bit of a weird schedule next week. I think there's one game on Tuesday and a bunch on Wednesday, but they're the early games. They're the, summer camp games. So I think what we're going to do instead is instead of having an episode out first thing Tuesday, we'll record maybe mid-morning, whatever. And Tuesday during the day, release a pod. So that way potentially you can bet Tuesday night and then also into the Wednesday early game. So keep an eye out for that. Don't think that we're just gone poof if you don't see the episode first thing Tuesday. This has been Buckets presented by BetMGM. I'm Maria Marino. And thank you, as always, Jim Turvey, for joining us, especially on this holiday.
Thank you.
All right, let's get buckets.